Welcome, traveler through time. Tonight, we journey to a place that existed long before the pyramids touched the Egyptian sky, before Greek philosophers walked marble halls, before Rome dreamed of empire. We travel to the cradle of civilization itself, to ancient Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers where humanity first learned to write, to build cities, and to dream of permanence in a world of flood and drought. Settle yourself comfortably. Let your breathing slow. Imagine yourself drifting back through the centuries, past the familiar landmarks of history, deeper and deeper into the mists of time, until you arrive at the fertile valleys of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, some 5,000 years ago. Here, in this ancient land, the first cities rose from mud and ambition. Here, the first laws were carved in stone, the first stories were pressed into clay, and the first empires stretched their fingers across the known world. But behind every great achievement, behind every towering ziggurat and gleaming temple, were countless ordinary people, farmers and scribes, soldiers and servants, priests and brickmakers, whose daily lives formed the foundation of everything we call civilization. Tonight, we will walk among them. We will feel the Mesopotamian sun on our backs, taste the dust in their air, and understand what it truly meant to live in humanity's first great experiment with organized society. We will meet a humble brickmaker whose calloused hands built temples to gods he would never approach follow, the rise of history's first emperor, from orphaned river child to ruler of the known world. Unlock the mysteries of humanity's first written words, and finally rest in the perfumed chambers of those who lived as gods among mortals. The rhythm of their lives was different from ours, slower in some ways, more brutal in others, but always touched by the same human hopes and fears that move us today. Close your eyes, and let us begin this gentle journey into the distant past, where the very foundations of human civilization were laid, brick by brick, word by word, law by law. Why it sucked to be a Sumerian brickmaker daily life immersion. You are not a noble. You are not a priest. You are not even a free farmer with your own small plot of barley. You are a maker of walls, of ovens and temples, of ziggurats and canals. Your name might be Enkidu or Naram-Sin, but it matters little. What matters is that you wake before the river mist rises, when the first pale light touches the eastern horizon, and by midday, your feet are raw and your tunic soaked in mud and sweat. The morning air is still cool as you emerge from your small mud brick house, its single room shared with your wife, your two children, and sometimes your elderly mother. The walls are thick enough to keep out the worst of the heat, but thin enough that you can hear your neighbor's baby crying through the night. Your house sits in a warren of similar dwellings, all pressed together like the bricks you make, forming the lower quarters of the great city of yore. You pause at your doorway, stretching muscles that ache from yesterday's labor. The air carries the scent of baking bread from the communal ovens, mixed with the earthier smell of the river and the acrid smoke from the pottery kilns already firing in the distance. Somewhere, a donkey brays, a dog barks. The rhythmic thud of mortar grinding grain echoes from the women's courtyards. These are the sounds of your world awakening. Your wife, Ninlil, presses a small clay bowl into your hands. It contains barley gruel, thick and filling, flavored with a little onion and salt. You eat it slowly, savoring the warmth, knowing it will be many hours before you taste food again. The barley is coarse between your teeth, but it provides the strength you need. Your children watch you with quiet eyes, understanding even at their young age that father's work is hard and important. Before you leave, you glance at the small household shrine in the corner, a tiny clay figurine of Enki, god of fresh water and crafts, protector of laborers like yourself. You murmur a brief prayer, asking for strong hands and steady work. The figurine's face is worn smooth by countless such prayers, its features soft and kind in the dim light filtering through the small window. The walk to the brick fields takes you through the awakening city. You pass the larger houses of the merchants and officials, their walls decorated with cone mosaics that catch the early light. Their courtyards are bigger, their roofs higher, their doorways guarded by fierce-looking sculptures. From within, you can hear the sound of servants preparing elaborate meals, the clink of metal vessels, the rustle of fine linen. This is a world that exists alongside yours, but might as well be on another planet. The street beneath your feet is hard-packed earth, worn smooth by countless footsteps. It winds between buildings, sometimes opening into small squares where vendors are already setting up their stalls. The smell of fresh fish from the river mingles with the dusty scent of grain and the sharp tang of fermented beer. A few early customers move between the stalls, their voices creating a gentle murmur in the morning air. As you walk, you join a steady stream of other laborers heading to their work. Some are stonemasons, their hands permanently stained with dust. Others are reed cutters, heading to the marshes with their long knives. Still others are porters, ready to carry goods from the docks to the warehouses. You nod to those you know, exchange quiet greetings, but conversation is sparse in these early hours. Everyone is saving their energy for the day ahead. The brick fields lie beyond the city walls, near the river where the clay is richest. As you approach, you can see the familiar landscape of your daily labor. Long, rectangular pits where the clay is dug, great heaps of straw waiting to be mixed in, and endless rows of wooden molds laid out to dry in the sun. The work area is already bustling with activity. Overseers move between the workers, checking yesterday's production, planning today's quotas. Your overseer, a thick-set man named Ornamu, approaches as you arrive. His tunic is cleaner than yours, his sandals newer, but his hands still bear the calluses of someone who has worked clay himself. He assigns you to a work gang of 6 men, all familiar faces. Together, you will be responsible for producing 300 bricks today, the same quota that has defined your life for the past 3 years. The clay pit is already busy. Men stand waist-deep in the thick, gray mud, their bodies glistening with sweat as they work it with their feet and hands. The clay must be just the right consistency, not too wet, not too dry, free of stones and debris. It clings to your legs as you wade in, cold and heavy. The sensation is familiar now, almost comforting in its predictability. You begin the rhythmic work of preparing the clay. Your feet knead it, your hands test its texture, adding water from leather buckets when it becomes too stiff, mixing in chopped straw to give the bricks strength. The straw pricks your fingers, leaving tiny cuts that sting in the muddy water. By the time the sun has fully risen, your calves are caked with clay, and your hands are already beginning to crack from the alkaline mud. The work is methodical, almost meditative. Scoop clay into the wooden mold. Press it smooth with your palms. Strike off the excess with a flat stick. Turn the mold over and tap out the wet brick onto the drying ground. Repeat. Again. Again. The rhythm becomes automatic, your body moving without conscious thought. This is the dance of creation, the ancient partnership between human will and river mud that builds temples and palaces. As the morning progresses, the sun climbs higher and grows hotter. The clay dries on your skin, creating a second skin that cracks when you move. Sweat runs down your back, mixing with the mud to create rivulets that tickle as they trace their way down your spine. The straw cuts on your hands sting more now, irritated by the salt of your sweat, but you continue. The quota must be met. Around you, your work gang maintains the same steady pace. Conversations are brief and practical. This clay's too wet. Need more straw here. Water buckets empty. There is no energy to waste on idle talk. The work demands everything you have. By midday, when the sun stands directly overhead like a bronze disk in the white sky, you have made perhaps 150 bricks. They lie in neat rows, slowly hardening in the heat. Your back aches from bending over the molds. Your shoulders burn from the repetitive motion. The inside of your mouth tastes of clay dust, and your throat is parched despite the water you've drunk. This is when the heat becomes truly oppressive. The clay seems to steam in the sun, and the air shimmers with heat waves. Your tunic clings to your body, soaked through with sweat. The overseer calls for the midday rest, and you gratefully seek the shade of a reed shelter erected at the edge of the work area. Here, in the blessed relief of shadow, you share your midday meal with your work gang. It is simple fare: barley bread, onions, and watered beer served in clay cups. The bread is coarse and filling, the onions sharp and pungent, the beer refreshing despite its bitter taste. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, knowing that this brief respite is all you will get until evening. The conversation during the meal is quiet and companionable. Your Baba complains about his aching back. Lugalain worries about his sick child. Enlil Bani shares news from his district of the city. These are the small concerns that fill the spaces between work, the human moments that make the labor bearable. You listen, contribute when you have something to say, but mostly you focus on resting your body for the afternoon's work. The afternoon shift begins as the sun starts its descent toward the western horizon. The clay is more difficult to work now, harder and more reluctant to take shape. Your hands are raw and swollen, your fingers cramped from gripping the molds. The cuts from the straw have opened wider, and clay dust has gotten into them, making them throb with a dull pain. But you continue. The rhythm of the work pulls you forward. Scoop, press, smooth, turn, tap. The pile of finished bricks grows steadily. 150 becomes 200. 200 becomes 250. The sun casts longer shadows, and the air begins to cool slightly, offering small relief from the heat. As evening approaches, your body is heavy with exhaustion. Every muscle aches, every joint protests. The clay has dried into a thick crust on your skin, and your hair is stiff with mud and sweat, but you have made your quota. 300 bricks lie drying in the sun, each one a small victory against the demanding earth. The overseer inspects your work with a critical eye. He checks the shape of the bricks, tests their consistency, counts them carefully. Satisfied, he makes a mark on his clay tablet, recording your day's production. This record will be carried to the scribes, who will note it in their larger accounts, adding your 300 bricks to the thousands that will eventually become part of some great building project. The walk home is quiet and contemplative. Your body moves slowly, weighted down by fatigue, but there is also a deep satisfaction in the work completed. You have added to the great edifice of civilization, contributed your small part to the eternal building project that is the city of yore. The bricks you made today might become part of a temple wall, a granary, a noble's house. They will outlast you, carrying a piece of your labor into the future. As you pass through the city gates, the evening air is filled with the sense of cooking food and the sounds of families gathering for the evening meal. Children play in the narrow streets, their laughter echoing off the walls. Women carry water jars from the public wells, their movements graceful and efficient. The city is settling into its evening rhythm, preparing for the night's rest. Your own house welcomes you with its familiar smells and sounds. Your wife has prepared a simple meal of barley stew, flavored with herbs from the small garden behind the house. Your children cluster around you, eager to hear about your day, though they already know the routine by heart. You wash the clay from your hands and face in a basin of precious water, feeling the relief as the cool liquid soothes your cracked skin. The evening meal is a time of quiet restoration. The stew is warm and nourishing, the bread soft and satisfying. You eat slowly, your body gradually recovering from the day's exertions. Your wife tells you about her day, the marketing, the cooking, the endless tasks that keep the household running. Your children share their small adventures, their discoveries, their questions about the world. As darkness falls, oil lamps are lit throughout the house, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The family gathers around the small hearth, the day's work done, the evening's rest beginning. Outside, the city settles into quiet. The sounds of the day fade away, replaced by the gentle murmur of families like yours, all recovering from their labors, all preparing for sleep. Before you lie down on your sleeping mat, you pause once more at the household shrine. The small figurine of Enki seems to smile in the lamplight, benevolent and understanding. You offer a prayer of gratitude for the day's work, for the strength in your hands, for the small blessings of food and shelter and family. Tomorrow will bring the same routine, the same rhythm of clay and straw and sweat, but tonight you rest. The sleeping mat is thin but comfortable, worn soft by years of use. Your body settles into it gratefully, every muscle relaxing as sleep approaches. Through the small window, you can see stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, the same stars that shine down on the great ziggurat, on the king's palace, on the houses of the wealthy. Tonight, they shine on you as well, a humble brickmaker whose daily labor helps hold the world together. Your breathing slows, your thoughts drift. Tomorrow, there will be more clay to work, more bricks to make, more contributions to the great building project of civilization. But tonight, you rest in the knowledge that your work matters, that your hands have shaped the very foundations of human achievement. In the quiet darkness, surrounded by the gentle sounds of your sleeping family, you drift into the peaceful sleep of the exhausted laborer, dreaming perhaps of rivers of clay and endless rows of drying, bricks of the eternal rhythm that connects your small life to the greater story of humanity as first great cities. The servant, a young man named Shamash-Bel-Ashizib, himself educated in the scribal arts, assists him in donning the robes of his office. The undergarment is finest linen, white as moonlight, soft as a whisper against his skin. Over this goes the outer robe, made of wool dyed deep blue and embroidered with silver thread in patterns that represent the constellations. The collar and cuffs are decorated with miniature stars of gold and precious stones, each one positioned to mirror the actual arrangement of stars in the night sky. The dressing ritual is unhurried, meditative. Each garment carries symbolic meaning, connecting the wearer to the divine order of the universe. The blue of the robe represents the night sky, the silver embroidery, the paths of the planets, the golden stars, the eternal points of light that guide human destiny. When fully dressed, Nabu Ramani becomes more than a man. He becomes a living embodiment of the cosmic order. His breakfast is served on vessels of silver and gold, arranged on a low table beside the window. The food itself is a luxury that would astonish the brickmaker we met earlier. Fresh figs, their sweetness concentrated by the Mesopotamian sun. Dates stuffed with nuts and honey, their flavors complex and satisfying. Bread made from the finest wheat, soft and white, spread with butter and honey. Pomegranate wine, diluted with water and spiced with cinnamon and cardamom. But even this simple meal carries deeper significance. The figs represent the cyclical nature of time, the dates the sweetness of divine favor, the bread the sustenance provided by the gods. He eats slowly, contemplatively, offering silent thanks for each bite. The wine, he knows, will sharpen his mind for the day's observations and calculations. As he eats, Shamash-Bel-Ashizib reads from the night's observations, recorded by the priests who maintain the constant watch over the heavens. The planet Mars has moved 2 degrees closer to the constellation of the Lion. The moon, now in its waning phase, will reach its conjunction with Venus in 3 days. A shooting star was observed in the northwestern sky, its path carefully noted, and recorded. Each observation is significant, not just for scientific purposes, but for the guidance it provides to the king and the people. The movements of the planets influence the affairs of nations. The phases of the moon affect the success of military campaigns. The appearance of comets foretells significant events. Nabu Ramani's task is to interpret these celestial messages, to translate the language of the stars into practical guidance for human affairs. After breakfast, he makes his way to the top of the ziggurat, climbing the great staircase that spirals around the massive structure. The steps are made of fired brick, each one perfectly measured and positioned. The ascent is gradual, designed to allow contemplation during the climb. Along the way, he passes through 7 different levels, each one dedicated to a different planetary deity, each one decorated with appropriate symbols and colors. The observatory at the top of the ziggurat is a marvel of ancient engineering. The platform is perfectly level, its surface marked with lines and circles that correspond to the movements of celestial bodies. Bronze instruments stand ready for use armillary spheres that model the movements of the stars, astrolabes for measuring celestial positions, gnomon for tracking the sun's path across the sky. Here, in the clear morning air, Nabu-Rimani begins his daily observations. The sky is his laboratory, the stars his experimental subjects. He notes the exact position of the sun as it rises, measures the angle of its rays, records the time of sunrise to the minute. These observations, accumulated over years and decades, allow him to predict eclipses, calculate the length of the year, determine the proper times for religious festivals. But the work is not purely scientific. Each observation is also a form of prayer, a communion with the divine forces that govern the universe. The priests of Babylon believe that the gods speak through the movements of the stars, that human destiny is written in the celestial patterns. By studying these patterns, by learning to read the language of the heavens, they serve as intermediaries between the divine and human worlds. As the morning progresses, other priests join him on the platform. Each one has his own area of expertise. One specializes in lunar observations, another in planetary movements, a third in the behavior of comets and meteors. They work in harmonious cooperation, sharing their observations, discussing their interpretations, building collectively on the vast body of astronomical knowledge that has been accumulated over centuries. The conversation among them is conducted in low, measured tones. They speak of the retrograde motion of Mars, the elongation of Venus, the precession of the equinoxes. Their language is technical, precise, but also filled with reverence for the cosmic forces they study. They are scientists and priests simultaneously, their intellectual pursuits inseparable from their spiritual devotion. Around midday, when the sun stands at its highest point, Nabu-Rimani returns to his chambers for the noon meal. The food is more elaborate than breakfast: roasted lamb, flavored with herbs from the royal gardens, vegetables cooked in olive oil and wine, pastries made with honey and nuts. The wine is stronger now, undiluted, its rich flavor complementing the subtle spices of the food. He eats in comfortable silence, his mind processing the morning's observations. The data must be recorded, calculations performed, patterns identified. But first, there is time for rest and reflection. The afternoon heat makes outdoor observation impossible, so this is the time for indoor work, for study and contemplation. After the meal, he retires to his private study, a room lined with shelves containing thousands of clay tablets. These are the accumulated records of centuries of astronomical observation star charts, planetary tables, eclipse predictions, mathematical calculations. The tablets are organized by subject and date, catalogued with the precision that characterizes all Babylonian scholarship. He selects a tablet containing observations of Venus made by his predecessor, a priest named Amzaduka, who lived 2 centuries earlier. The cuneiform text is dense with numerical data, recording the exact positions of the planet on specific dates. By comparing these ancient observations with his own recent measurements, Nabu-Rimani can discern the long-term patterns that govern planetary motion. The work requires intense concentration. He must convert the ancient measurements into modern units, account for changes in the calendar system, correct for observational errors. The mathematics involved is complex, requiring skills that few people in the ancient world possess. But for Nabu-Ramani, trained from childhood in the scribal arts, the calculations flow as naturally as breathing Dot as he works. The afternoon light streaming through the window gradually shifts and dims. The shadows on the floor grow longer, marking the passage of time with the precision of a sundial. Servants move quietly through the chambers, lighting oil lamps, preparing for the evening meal. The city below begins to settle into its evening rhythm, but Nabu-Ramani's work continues. The evening meal is a social occasion. He is joined by other high-ranking priests, officials from the royal court, visiting scholars from distant cities. The conversation ranges over many topics: politics, religion, philosophy, literature. But inevitably, it returns to astronomy, to the movements of the stars and their influence on human affairs. The dining room is elegantly appointed, with murals depicting the labors of the gods, the creation of the world, the establishment of the cosmic order. The guests recline on couches covered with silk cushions, their feet washed by servants before the meal begins. The food is served on gold plates, the wine in cups of silver and crystal. But even in this luxurious setting, the conversation maintains the serious tone appropriate to learned discourse. A visiting astronomer from Egypt describes new techniques for predicting eclipses. A court official asks about the astrological significance of a recent planetary conjunction. A young priest seeks guidance on interpreting a complex astronomical text. Nabu-Ramani listens more than he speaks. His response is measured and thoughtful. He has learned that wisdom lies not in displaying knowledge, but in understanding when and how to share it. His words carry weight because they are backed by decades of careful observation and study. When he speaks, others listen. As the evening progresses, the conversation becomes more philosophical. What is the relationship between celestial and earthly events? How do the gods communicate their will through the movements of the stars? What does it mean to live in harmony with the cosmic order? These are questions that have occupied thinkers for generations, and they will continue to do so long after the current generation has passed into memory. After the guests depart, Nabu-Ramani performs his evening rituals. He returns to the observatory for the night's observations, noting the positions of the stars and planets as they become visible in the darkening sky. The work is peaceful, meditative. The cool night air is a relief after the heat of the day, and the stars seem closer, more accessible than during the harsh light of noon. The journey takes Gilgamesh through landscapes both physical and spiritual. He travels to the edge of the world, passes through the mountains where the sun sets, crosses the waters of death. Along the way, he encounters strange beings, the scorpion men, who guard the mountain passes, the tavern keeper who offers wisdom about the nature of human existence, the boatman who ferries him across the deadly waters. When Gilgamesh finally reaches Utnapishtim, the old man tells him the story of the flood, how the gods decided to destroy humanity, how Utnapishtim was warned in a dream and built a great boat to save his family and representatives of all living things. It is a story that will later echo in the biblical account of Noah, but here it serves a different purpose. Utnapishtim explains that immortality was a one-time gift from the gods, not something that can be achieved through human effort. The epic's conclusion is both tragic and profound. Gilgamesh returns to Uruk empty-handed, having failed in his quest for immortality. But he has gained something else: wisdom, acceptance of human mortality, and a deeper understanding of what it means to be human. The final tablet describes how he looks upon the great walls of Uruk, the city he has built, and finds in them a different kind of immortality, the immortality of human achievement, of civilization itself. This ancient story, pressed into clay by scribes who have been dust for millennia, speaks to questions that still haunt us today. What is the meaning of life? How do we deal with loss and grief? What kind of immortality is available to mortal beings? The fact that these questions were being asked and explored in sophisticated literary form 5,000 years ago is a testament to the unchanging nature of human consciousness. But the Epic of Gilgamesh is just one jewel in the vast treasure. House of Mesopotamian literature. There are love songs that capture the tender emotions between goddess and mortal, creation myths that explain the origins of the world, wisdom literature that offers practical advice for living a good life. There are administrative records that reveal the daily workings of ancient bureaucracy, legal documents that show how justice was administered, personal letters that offer glimpses into the private lives of ordinary people. The tragedy is that we have only begun to unlock these secrets. Of the hundreds of thousands of tablets that have been excavated, only a fraction have been translated and published. Thousands more remain in museum storage rooms, waiting for scholars with the specialized knowledge to read them. Still more lie buried in the ruins of ancient cities, their secrets intact beneath the desert sand. The process of translation is painstaking and often frustrating. Cuneiform tablets are frequently damaged, with crucial passages missing or illegible. The language itself presents challenges. Sumerian is unrelated to any known language family, while Akkadian, though better understood, contains many archaic forms and technical terms. A single tablet might take months or years to translate properly, and even then, scholars often disagree about the meaning of particular passages. But with each tablet translated, with each text published, our understanding of ancient Mesopotamian civilization grows richer and more nuanced. We learn about their religious beliefs, their social structures, their economic systems, their artistic achievements. We discover that they were not the primitive barbarians that earlier scholars sometimes portrayed, but sophisticated people with complex inner lives and profound insights into the human condition. The libraries of Mesopotamia were not just repositories of information, but centers of learning and research. Scholars from across the ancient world came to study in these great collections, copying texts to take back to their own countries, contributing to the international exchange of knowledge that characterized the ancient Near East. The influence of Mesopotamian learning can be traced in the literature Egypt, Israel, Greece, and Rome. Consider the quiet scholars who worked in these libraries, bent over their clay tablets in the flickering light of oil lamps. They were preserving not just the written word, but the very essence of human thought and creativity. They understood that knowledge was precious, that the wisdom of the past must be carefully preserved for future generations. In their patient work of copying and cataloging, they were performing one of humanity's most essential tasks, the transmission of culture. Across time, the scribes themselves were acutely aware of their role as guardians of knowledge. Many tablets end with colophon scribal, notes that identify the copyist, the date of copying, and sometimes warnings against unauthorized copying or damage to the text. These ancient librarians knew that their work was vital to the continuity of civilization, that without their efforts, the accumulated wisdom of their people would be lost forever. But loss is inevitable, and we must face the sobering reality that much of ancient Mesopotamian literature has indeed been lost forever. Cities were conquered and burned, libraries destroyed, tablets broken and scattered. The knowledge that took centuries to accumulate could be wiped out in a single catastrophic event. The fact that so much has survived is due largely to the durability of clay and the dry climate of the region. Yet what has survived continues to yield new insights. Computer analysis of cuneiform texts has revealed patterns and connections that earlier scholars missed. Digital libraries are making ancient texts accessible to researchers around the world. New archaeological discoveries continue to add to our understanding of Mesopotamian civilization. The conversation between past and present, between ancient authors and modern readers, continues to unfold in the quiet of the museum storage room, surrounded by boxes of clay tablets waiting to be studied. One can almost hear the whispers of the ancient scribes. They speak of kings and gods, of love and loss, of the eternal human struggle to understand our place in the cosmos. Their voices, preserved in wedge-shaped marks on clay, remind us that the fundamental questions of human existence are timeless, that the search for meaning and understanding connects us across the Yahal. Millennia. The legacy of cuneiform writing extends far beyond the ancient world. The very concept of writing, the idea that thoughts and words can be preserved in permanent form, was perhaps the most revolutionary development in human history. It allowed for the accumulation of knowledge, the development of complex legal and administrative systems, the preservation of literature and learning. Every book, every document, every text message sent today owes its existence to those ancient scribes who first pressed wedge-shaped marks into clay. And so, in the gentle silence of the library stacks, surrounded by the patient wisdom of the ages, we can appreciate the profound achievement of those long-dead scribes. They gave us the gift of written language, the ability to speak across time, the power to preserve human thought and creativity for future generations. In their careful work, their dedication to accuracy, their reverence for learning, they laid the foundation for all human intellectual achievement. The clay tablets sleep in their storage boxes, waiting for the touch of scholarly hands to awaken. Their secrets. In the wedge-shaped marks that cover their surfaces, the voices of the ancient world wait patiently to be heard once more. They have stories to tell, wisdom to share, insights to offer. They remind us that we are part of a great conversation that began 5,000 years ago and continues still. A conversation about what it means to be human in an often mysterious and challenging world. Segment 4. Inside the life of a Babylonian priest-astronomerite / contrasting daily life, he wakes slowly in linen sheets. His hands do not callous. Speaks to stars and to gods, and both, he believes, listen. The morning light filters through the high windows of his chamber in the ziggurat of Marduk, casting geometric patterns on the polished floor. This is Nabu-Rimani, priest-astronomer of Babylon, and his day begins not with the harsh reality of physical labor, but with the gentle rhythm of ritual and contemplation. The room around him speaks of privilege and learning. The walls are decorated with glazed bricks depicting constellations and mythological scenes. Astronomical charts, drawn on fine papyrus and clay tablets, rest on cedar tables inlaid with ivory and gold. Instruments of brass and silver catch the early light astrolabes for measuring the positions of stars, water clocks for marking the passage of time, carefully calibrated sundials for the precise division of daylight hours. His bed is not a simple mat on the floor, but a raised platform draped with the finest textiles, wool dyed with precious purple from distant Phoenician shores, linen so fine it seems to shimmer in the morning light. The sheets are changed daily by servants who move through his quarters with silent efficiency, their footsteps muffled by thick carpets woven in patterns that mirror the movements of celestial bodies. But even in this luxury, there is purpose. Nabu-Rimani's life is governed by the same celestial rhythms that he studies. He rises before dawn not from necessity, but from devotion, to witness the morning stars in their eternal dance, to record their positions with the precision that has made Babylonian astronomy the wonder of the ancient world. The stars are his teachers, his guides, his sacred responsibility. The palace where Sargon spends his later years is a testament to his achievements. The walls are decorated with scenes of his conquests, carved in stone and inlaid with precious metals. The throne room is vast and imposing, designed to inspire awe in visitors from distant lands. Gardens filled with exotic plants and animals surround the palace, watered by canals that bring the life-giving waters of the Euphrates into the heart of the city. Yet for all his power and glory, Sargon remains, aware of his humble origins. He remembers the reed basket on the river, the kindness of Aki, the lessons learned in the working quarters of Kish. Perhaps this is why his rule is marked by a certain humanity, a recognition that even the most powerful king is still subject to the same hopes and fears that drive all human beings. As he ages, Sargon faces the challenges that come to all long-lived rulers. His empire, vast and prosperous, begins to show signs of strain. Distant provinces grow restless. His sons compete for favor and position. The delicate balance of power that has held his empire together begins to shift. He deals with these challenges with the same careful calculation that marked his rise to power. But he knows that his time is limited. The end comes not with dramatic battle or palace intrigue, but with the simple fact of mortality. Sargon dies in his bed, surrounded by his family and advisors, having ruled for more than 50 years. His empire will outlast him by several generations, but eventually it too will crumble, as all empires do. The city of Akkad will be abandoned, its ruins swallowed by the desert sand. But the legend of Sargon the Great will endure. Future kings will claim descent from him, will invoke his name to legitimize their own rule. The story of the child in the reed basket will be told and retold, becoming a template for the mythic origins of heroes. The idea of empire, of a single ruler governing multiple cities and peoples, will become the standard model for political organization throughout the ancient world. In the quiet of the night, in the ruins of ancient cities, the ghost of Sargon still walks. He is the eternal conqueror, the outsider who became king, the man who showed that the highest positions in society could be claimed through merit and ambition rather than birth. His story speaks to something deep in the human spirit, the belief that we can rise above our circumstances, that greatness is not reserved for the well-born, that even the humblest beginning can lead to the most extraordinary destiny. The river Euphrates still flows through the Mesopotamian plain, carrying its burden of silt and memory. The cities that Sargon conquered have long since crumbled, their walls returned to the dust from which they came. But the idea of empire, the dream of uniting the world under a single rule, the vision of order imposed upon chaos, these things persist. They are Sargon's true legacy, more enduring than bronze or stone, more lasting than the mightiest fortress. And so we remember him, this child of the river who became king of the world, this cupbearer who founded the first empire. In the soft whisper of wind through ancient ruins, in the gentle lapping of water against reed-lined banks, in the quiet persistence of human ambition across the millennia, the story of Sargon the Great continues to unfold, a reminder that in the grand sweep of history, even the humblest beginnings can lead to the most extraordinary achievements. Segment 3. The Secrets of Cuneiform and the Lost. Libraries of Mesopotamia mystery, culture, archaeology, thousands of clay tablets buried beneath the dust of palaces. What stories did they keep? What secrets still lie unread? In the silent ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, archaeologists have uncovered one of humanity's greatest treasures, not gold or jewels, but something far more precious, the written thoughts of people who lived 5,000 years ago, pressed into clay and baked hard by time and fire. Close your eyes and imagine walking through the ruins of an ancient library. The walls have long since crumbled, the roof has collapsed, but scattered across the floor like fallen leaves are thousands upon thousands of clay tablets, each one bearing the wedge-shaped marks that scholars call cuneiform. These are not mere records of grain sales or tax collections, though such tablets exist in abundance. These are the dreams and fears, the stories and songs, the scientific observations and religious meditations of the world's first literate civilization. The invention of writing was not a sudden flash of inspiration, but a gradual evolution born from the practical needs of an increasingly complex society. Picture a Sumerian accountant in the city of Uruk, sometime around 3200 BCE, struggling to keep track of the temple's vast stores of grain, oil, and livestock. Simple tally marks were no longer sufficient. The economy had grown too complex, the transactions too numerous, the need for accuracy too great. At first, the solution was pictographic simple drawings that represented the things being counted. A drawing of a sheep meant sheep. A drawing of a jar meant oil. But as the system evolved, these pictures became more abstract, more stylized. The curved lines that represented a sheep's horn became a few simple wedges pressed into the clay. The flowing outline of a jar became a series of angular marks. The tool that made this possible was deceptively simple. A reed stylus, cut from the marshes that surrounded the great cities. The scribe would hold this stylus at an angle and press it into the soft clay, creating the characteristic wedge-shaped marks that give cuneiform its name. The clay itself was prepared with care, kneaded to just the right consistency, formed into tablets of various sizes, depending on the length of the text to be recorded. But somewhere in this practical evolution, something magical happened. The scribes discovered that these wedge-shaped marks could represent not just objects, but sounds. The symbol for water could also represent the sound A in the Sumerian language. The symbol for arrow could represent the sound T. Suddenly, the system could capture not just inventories, but ideas, stories, poetry, prayers, the full range of human thought and expression. The scribal schools of ancient Mesopotamia were the world's first institutions of higher learning. Young boys for literacy was largely a male privilege, would spend years learning to form the hundreds of cuneiform signs with precision and speed. They practiced on clay tablets, writing and rewriting the same exercises until their hands moved automatically, until the complex signs flowed from their styluses like water from a spring. The education was rigorous and comprehensive. Students learned not just to write, but to calculate, to understand the movement of the stars, to recite the great literature of their civilization. They studied mathematics, astronomy, medicine, law, and religion. They memorized the epic poems and hymns that formed the cultural foundation of their society. They learned multiple languages, for the educated elite of Mesopotamia were cosmopolitan, trading and corresponding with peoples from Egypt to the Indus Valley. In the great library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh, we can see the pinnacle of this scribal tradition. King Ashurbanipal, who ruled the Assyrian Empire in the 7th century BCE, was perhaps the most scholarly monarch in history. He commanded his agents to collect copies of every important text in his empire, creating a library that contained over 30,000 tablets. The king himself was literate, able to read the ancient Sumerian texts as well as the Akkadian language of his own time. Imagine walking through this library in its heyday. The tablets are organized by subject matter, carefully cataloged and cross-referenced. Here are the epic poems, the adventures of Gilgamesh, the story of the Great Flood, the descent of Ishtar into the underworld. There are the scientific texts, observations of lunar eclipses, calculations of planetary movements, medical treatises describing diseases and their treatments. There are the legal codes, the royal correspondence, the religious rituals, the works of literature and poetry. The scribes who worked in this library were the intellectual elite of their society. They wore fine linen robes, their hands soft from years of working with clay rather than stone or metal. They moved through the library with quiet efficiency, retrieving tablets for scholars, making copies of important texts, adding new acquisitions to the collection. The soft rustling of their robes, the gentle tapping of styluses on clay, the whispered conversations about complex textual problems, these were the sounds of the ancient. world's most sophisticated center of learning, but perhaps the most remarkable. Discovery in this library was a text that speaks directly to the human condition in ways that still resonate today. The Epic of Gilgamesh, preserved in 12 tablets, tells the story of a king who undertakes a great journey to discover the secret of immortality. It is a story of friendship and loss, of the search for meaning in a mortal existence, of the tension between civilization and the wild. The epic begins with Gilgamesh as a tyrannical king of Uruk, so powerful and oppressive that his people pray to the gods for relief. The gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals, to challenge Gilgamesh. The two become friends after a mighty wrestling match, and together they undertake heroic adventures. But when Enkidu dies, Gilgamesh is overcome with grief and embarks on a quest to find Apishtim, the survivor of the Great Flood, who possesses the secret of eternal life. They say he was found in a reed basket on the Euphrates. They say he became king of the world. The truth, as always, lies somewhere between legend and the hard clay tablets that record the rise and fall of empires. But let us begin with what we know and what we can imagine about the man who would become Sargon of Akkad, the first emperor in human history. Picture, if you will, the great river Euphrates as it winds through the Mesopotamian plain some 4,300 years ago. The water moves slowly, heavy with silt, carrying the life-giving mud that makes the land fertile. Along its banks, cities rise like islands from the surrounding fields. Kish, Nippur, Uruk, you're each one a small kingdom unto itself, ruled by priest-kings who speak to gods and command the loyalty of farmers and craftsmen. It is into this world that a child is born who will change everything. His birth name is lost to history, but the world would come to know him as Sharukin, righteous king, though we call him Sargon. The circumstances of his birth are wrapped in the kind of mythic language that powerful men use to explain their humble origins. But strip away the legend, and we find a story that speaks to something deeper, the ancient human dream of rising above them in the circumstances of one's birth. The legend tells us that his mother was a priestess who could not acknowledge her child. In the shadowy world of temple politics and religious obligations, such things happened. An unwed priestess with a child faced disgrace, perhaps death. And so, as the story goes, she placed her infant son in a basket woven from reeds, sealed it with pitch to keep out the water, and set it adrift on the Euphrates. Imagine that basket floating down the river in the early morning mist. The baby within sleeps peacefully, unaware that he drifts toward a destiny that will reshape the ancient world. The current carries him past the great walls of cities, past the fields where farmers tend their crops, past the docks where merchants load their goods. The river that has nurtured civilization for millennia now carries its future conqueror. The basket comes to rest in the reeds near the city of Kish, where it is discovered by a man named Aki. History remembers Aki as a drawer of water, a humble profession that suggests he was neither nobleman nor priest, but simply a working man who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Perhaps he was checking his nets, or filling water jars, or simply walking along the riverbank in the cool of the morning. When he heard the infant's cry, Aki lifts the child from the basket and looks into eyes that will one day gaze upon the entire known world as their domain. But for now, the child is simply another mouth to feed, another responsibility in a world where survival is never guaranteed. Aki takes the baby home, gives him a name, raises him as his own son. It is an act of simple human kindness that will echo through the ages. The boy grows up in the lower quarters of Kish, among the potters and metalworkers, the farmers and laborers. His world is one of hard work and simple pleasures, of morning markets and evening meals, of festivals that mark the turning of the seasons. He learns the rhythms of a working life, the value of loyalty, the importance of understanding people from all walks of life. These lessons, learned in the dust and sweat of common labor, will serve him well when he commands armies and governs cities. As a young man, he catches the attention of Ur-Zababa, the king of Kish. Perhaps it is his intelligence, his reliability, or simply his pleasing appearance that brings him to the royal court. He is appointed as a cupbearer, a position that seems humble, but actually places him at the very center of power. The cupbearer serves the king his wine, tastes it first, ensures it is not poisoned, stands at the king's right hand during ceremonies and councils. It is a position of trust, of intimate access to the mechanisms of royal power. In the palace of Kish, the young man who will become Sargon observes the delicate dance of politics. He watches as ambassadors arrive from distant cities, bearing gifts and messages. He listens as scribes read reports from the provinces, detailing harvests and tax collections. He sees how power works, how it flows from the king through his officials to the people, how it can be maintained through fear or love, through generosity or strictness. The palace itself is a marvel of ancient engineering and artistry. The walls are decorated with elaborate mosaics depicting scenes of royal power, the king receiving tribute, leading armies, performing religious ceremonies. The floors are made of fired brick, smooth and cool beneath sandaled feet. The rooms are large and airy, with high ceilings supported by massive columns. Oil lamps burn constantly, casting dancing shadows on the painted walls. But beneath the grandeur, the young cupbearer senses something else: weakness. King Ur-Zababa is growing old, his grip on power loosening. The other cities grow restless, testing his authority. Within the palace itself, there are whispers of discontent, murmurs, of those who think they could rule better. The young man listens to these whispers, watches these power plays, and slowly begins to understand that kingdoms are not eternal things, but fragile constructions that can be toppled by the right combination of ambition and opportunity. The moment comes, as such moments always do, suddenly and without warning. Perhaps it is a palace coup, a military rebellion, or simply the death of the old king. The details are lost to time, but the result is clear. The young cupbearer seizes power in Kish. He is no longer a servant, but a king. He takes the throne, names Sargon, the righteous king, and begins the conquest that will make him the most powerful man in the world. But conquest is not simply a matter of military might. It is a slow, methodical process of political calculation, diplomatic maneuvering, and careful timing. Sargon understands this better than most. He has seen power from the inside, has watched how it operates, how it can be gained and lost. He knows that lasting victory requires more than just winning battles. It requires the ability to govern, to inspire loyalty, to create systems that will endure. His first target is the city of Uruk, ruled by King Lugal-Zc, who has already conquered several other cities and styled himself king of the land. The confrontation between Sargon and Lugal-Zc is more than just a battle between two armies. It is a clash between two different visions of power, two different ways of organizing society. The armies meet on the plain between the cities. Under the blazing Mesopotamian sun, Sargon's forces are disciplined, well-equipped, and utterly loyal to their king. They fight with the focused intensity of men who believe in their cause, who trust their leader, who know that victory will bring them wealth and honor. The battle is fierce but decisive. Lugal-Zc is defeated, captured, and brought in chains to Nippur, where he is displayed to the people as a symbol of Sargon's power. But victory in battle is only the beginning. Now comes the harder task of governing a conquered territory, of transforming military conquest into political control. Sargon proves to be as skilled at administration as he is at warfare. He establishes governors in the conquered cities, men chosen for their loyalty and competence rather than their noble birth. He creates a system of tribute that enriches his kingdom without crushing the conquered peoples. He builds roads and establishes trade routes that connect his growing empire. The key to Sargon's success lies not just in his military prowess, but in his understanding of human nature. He knows that people will accept foreign rule if it brings them security and prosperity. He protects the trade routes, ensures that the rivers and canals are properly maintained, and allows local customs and religions to continue unchanged. His rule is firm but not oppressive, centralized but not micromanaging. City after city falls to his armies or submits to his authority. Babylon, Sippar, Kazalu, each conquest adds to his growing empire. But Sargon's ambitions extend beyond Mesopotamia. He looks to the mountains of the east, where silver and lapis lazuli wait to be claimed. He gazes toward the Mediterranean Sea, where cedar forests and trading ports beckon. He dreams of an empire that spans the known world. The campaigns that follow are monuments to careful planning and relentless execution. Sargon's armies march through the Zagros Mountains, across the Syrian plains, to the shores of the Mediterranean. They conquer not just through force of arms, but through the creation of supply lines, the establishment of garrison towns, the patient work of turning military occupation into political control. In the cool of the evening, in his palace in the city of Akkad city, he has built for nothing to serve as the capital of his empire. Sargon reviews the reports from his governors. Clay tablets arrive daily, detailing the state of distant provinces, the collection of tribute, the movement of armies. The empire has become a vast machine of administration, and Sargon is its master mechanic. But even as his empire reaches its greatest extent, Sargon knows that all human achievements are temporary. He has seen kingdoms rise and fall, has witnessed the wheel of fortune turn countless times. He makes provisions for the succession, trains his sons in the arts of war and governance, tries to ensure that his empire will outlast him. It is the eternal struggle of the powerful to create something that will endure beyond their own mortality.